this video, I'm going to make my first handle for a lathe tool. It's a round carbide tip lathe tool. The handle is going to be made out of ash. My brother gave me 4 pieces of ash. He was making a desk and made 4 legs and didn't like the way they turned out. My concern was I like the ash and I like the wood, but the slot that's in it, I needed to make sure that in taking the slot out that I had enough room for the copper collar that I wanted to put on it. So I'm using my roughing gouge and I'm just whittling away at it to get it down. The slots that he had in it, you can see there, they're kind of deep, and I wasn't sure if it was going to go down far enough. So I basically worked on that end and that end only to make sure that the collar would fit and the slots were out of it. I could have probably cut it and made it a shorter handle, but it's a 23-inch handle. At this point it is. You'll see later where it got a little shorter because of screw up that I did. But here I'm using the roughing gouge and just sneaking up on it. And then I use a square carbide cutter to square the ends of it up. The transition from the sleeve where the copper fitting was going to be needed to be squared up. And then to part it off also needed to be squared up. So there's a reason I switched to the square carbide cutter. And I'm just about there with it. Yep, so then I moved down. Another thing I'm going to get is a longer tool rest. A longer tool rest would have made this a little bit better. Although this one's not bad. I think I had to move it like 3 or 4 times. But a longer one would have been cool. And I'm just whittling away on the wood. And in a little bit, when I work on the other end, it starts getting apparent to me that the tool needs sharpening. It's getting a little harder to drag across. It's getting a little chippier, and it needs to be sharpened. So one of the next videos that are coming out, I got a Rikon slow speed grinder with the sharpening wheels on it and a Wolverine setup to where I sharpened this gouge up, which was extremely easy to do. I have a video on it coming out too. It's a very short one. It's very easy to do with the setup and everything. But that video will be coming out. I've got some pins coming out. Did a couple more teacher pins for some teachers. I've got one breast cancer pin, turned out very nice. This is going to be a 9/16 inch carbide round tip, and I got it mainly for bowls, and I'll have a video coming out here in the next couple weeks of the first bowl on the lathe. I got a really nice blank. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I may segment it up, chop it up and segment it up. I may just turn it by itself to do one on here. I'm not sure yet on it. I may do 2. I may do just the bowl, and then I may go ahead and do a segmented bowl up. But here I'm using the spindle gouge to cove it for the end handle where it'll be rounded off. So I'm getting it rounded to where I'm comfortable. I'm not real comfortable yet in getting it cut off the lathe. I'd rather get it down to where I'm comfortable, then I'll take it over to the bandsaw and cut it. And you'll see the mistake that I make on that. And And here I'm just sanding it down, and then I'm getting a parting spot. I'm using a parting tool. I've got a large parting tool. I need a real thin one, so that'd be one of the next tools that I'll make. And then I'm using getting the end of it down. So then I take it off, I take it over to the bandsaw, and here's where the big mistake is made. You'll see me set it up, and you'll see me set up the wrong place. I'm sitting there chopping the sleeve of it off, or the collar of it off, and I whack that thing right off, and I should be over here. That's where I should be. But I nonchalantly just whacked this thing right off. Don't realize what I did. Still don't realize it. So I'm kind of truing it up. I'm taking a couple of shavings off of it because the handle's not sitting exactly square. And I'll sand the rest of it off is what my thinking is. And here I am just kind of squaring it up best I can on the bandsaw. Take it off. Still haven't realized what's going on. Take the end, the rounded end. Take it off. Okay. Then I go over to the sander and I sand the end of it down. Now I'm just sanding away, oblivious to what's going on. So then I start squaring the end of it off and I realize what went on. So I took it back on the lathe and I took the sleeve down and got it fitted back on, drilled a hole with it, which should have been done in the first. There's several mistakes here, and that was one of actually the first mistake. I should have drilled a hole where it was all squared up and in the square form before I mounted it on the lathe, because when I remounted this thing to get it smoothed off between the sleeve and the wood itself, it wasn't exactly round. Now, it didn't bother it at the end, but it would have made it a much better looking tool and much better if it was drilled in the beginning. That way it would have been round all the way through. But I got it sleeve back up, and you can see it's not exactly true, but this end I wanted to make sure I got it sanded, and then the transition from the sleeve to the wood, I wanted to make sure that was smooth. So I got it sanded down, and I like the grain on it. The grain on the ash, it was really good wood to work with. The grain was really nice. It had some close grains, and then of course on the sides, or on the quarter part of it, it was larger, wider grained. I'm putting sanding sealer on it right now, and I'm putting it on pretty liberal and getting it worked in. So to me, the changes I would make on this is drill a hole first, then it would have stayed true all the way through it, and I could have kept it on the lathe all the way through it. And remounted it, and it would have stayed true. The second thing is, of course, don't cut the sleeve off. And then I think I would experiment a little bit with a different stain. I would have stained this. It turned out okay. I mean, I like the grain, but I think even a darker grain or a darker stain would have kept the grain. You could have seen the grain really well. So possibly a dark red or reddish type color. I think the grain would have stayed really well with that, and I think the reddish would have been more along the lines of a lathe handle. So the next one I do changes I would make, certainly drill a hole first, don't cut the end off, and then I would experiment a little bit with the stains. Again, for my first one, didn't turn out bad. Didn't turn out bad at all. I've used it since, and it's fine. It's a good carbide tool. And I'll sit there, and it's kind of drying a little bit right now. And then I polish it up. I use friction polish on it. And I put like, I think 2 or 3 coats on it, and then worked it in really good. So next handle, I think I'm going to try more of a reddish, dark red type of stain on it. I think the ash would accept it good. I think the grain would still be, you could see the grain really well with it. And I might do that sooner than later. Again, some more videos coming up. The sharpening system on how I mounted it and how I measured it to where the Wolverine system is square to the wheel. And then I used it on that bowl gouge to sharpen it up. And how I kept the angle on it, which is really easy to do. It was really an easy tool to sharpen. I need an attachment for the spindle gouge, and I'll get it also. But you can see it's coming out really well. Let's see, a couple more videos coming out, some pins. Again, the bowl I'll do here in a couple weeks, maybe even a segmented one also. I'm working the polish in right there, getting a friction polish in, getting it heated up. You can see it's shined up pretty good. And then I cut the end of it off with that larger parting tool. Again, one of the tools that I'll get will be a real thin one. You can see it grab because it's thick, but I use the edge of it to kind of V it off. And then epoxied the tool in, and it turned out good. I was satisfied. Certainly after I screwed it up, it turned out really well. So appreciate everybody watching. Please subscribe, and we'll continue the journey on together. More videos coming. So thank you very much, and keep in touch.